Hi, my name is Craig and I'm here to tell you about my repair of a 2019 Ridgeline hood. I've owned the car since it was new. The hood has always been very flexible, moving noticeably in any air turbulence behind a truck, passing a truck on the highway, or even in a stiff wind. It's a little bit unnerving, but in 2022 there was a recall and I took my truck back. They examined it, put in a reinforcing plate up at the latch, and called it good. The hood continued to flutter a bunch in any turbulent air. This summer, while I was driving on a two-lane road, a truck passed me going the other direction into about a 30-mile-an-hour headwind. So he had a huge bow wake, and the left front corner of the hood lifted up about 5 inches, associated with this tremendous popping sound. When we pulled over to the side of the road, the hood was still deformed up about 1.5 inches up in the left front corner, and it was pretty clear that I couldn't drive that way. So I grabbed the hood, parked it back down into approximate position, used a bunch of Gorilla Tape around the front of the hood, and continued my 6,000-mile road trip that way. When I got back home, took it into the dealer, who examined it, said, yep, you need a new hood, but it's not our problem, we're not going to pay for it. And said, if you want to do something else, contact Honda Customer Care nationally. So I contacted him, filled out the questionnaire, told him the story, and still haven't heard back. In the meantime, I decided I really didn't want to drive around with Gorilla Tape, and so decided there's no harm, I might as well try to fix the thing myself. So this is what I did. Basically, I tried to crank the hood back down into its approximately normal shape, and that involved a fair amount of grunting and groaning, but the hood is so flexible that ultimately I got it so it was pretty close in the corners to the way that it should be. Then I pulled off the pad, and I've actually already removed the pad. It's held on with these clips that just pull out, and took a look at it. This underlying reinforcement structure was bonded to the skin of the hood with little tiny tabs of body panel adhesive, and you can see where they were if you look carefully. There are little contact points all around here that had glue on them, but the glue was no longer attached to the skin of the hood pretty much anywhere. So I decided that the problem here was too much hood flexibility compounded by failure of reinforcement. And I also thought that part of the problem is the half-inch gap between the grille and the hood, and this flimsy factory gasket that basically allows air incursion underneath the hood. I thought that combination was probably enough to allow it to be unstable. So my approach to this was not subtle, and it involved a bunch of different things. But basically what I did was to use 3M, it's called 4200 marine adhesive, and a caulking gun. And if you look at all the white stuff in here, basically I caulked every seam that was close enough to caulk within about an 1/8 inch gap. When I could, I stuffed a screwdriver between the skin and the reinforcement, squirted caulk in there, and then allowed it to seal back in. And did that everywhere that I could. Now, there are some places you couldn't really get to, like up in here, which I thought was a pretty important place. So I wound up using minimally expanding great stuff polyurethane foam to fill those voids. Now, that stuff is real sticky, but it's not real rigid. And the purpose of that was to use the potential pretty big surface area there just to try to stabilize things a little bit. I did examine kind of the fire safety of using polyurethane foam in there and decided it's probably safe enough. The third thing I did was to pull this bracket off at the bottom. It's held on with 3 bolts, and the holes are slotted, but it was already slotted, it was already bolted in at the bottom portion of its possible position. And so I slotted the tops of those holes a little bit more, just another 1.5 millimeters or so, put it back in to try to get the hood to close more securely. Finally, in an effort to mitigate the air underneath, I bought some MD Auto and Marine weather strip and put it around here at a contact point with the original factory gasket. So the factory gasket comes down and lands on this weather strip. And then I had a little bit left over, and I applied it around the back of the factory weather strip as well in an effort to keep it from pulling forward. So those 4 things: 3M 4200 caulk in all caulkable area after bending it down to approximate position, Great Stuff foam, minimally expanding in the big voids in here, latch modification, and weather stripping here. And then I'll basically show you what we landed with. So here's the final view of the hood. You can see I did pretty well getting that evened out. The modified gasket all the way around. And this side, perhaps the hood is raised up a little bit, but it's really rigid. You can't pull it up at all over on that side. I can maybe pull it up a little over here, but far, far better than it ever was new.